Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, for the PS4, Xbox One, and eventually Xbox Series X and X. Instead of trying to be different or changing the formula, in a lot of ways Crash Bandicoot 4 is a return to form in the best way possible. You play as Crash or Coco or some other interesting figures that show up from time to time as you tackle stage after stage, jumping over or jumping onto certain enemies, breaking crates and boxes, and avoiding getting blown up by TNT and Nitro. Of course, as you progress through each level, the difficulty of the stage gets a little bit more grandiose, there's a lot more platforming, and one of the more interesting aspects about Crash 4 are the special abilities attached to the mask that have been a part of the Crash Bandicoot lore pretty much since the beginning. The mask has specific abilities, like one mask allows for you to change the space and time that you have, so maybe something that is invisible at one point can become visible while turning something else that was visible invisible. Thankfully, even though you play as Coco or Crash, they play pretty much exactly the same, though there is something very interesting that I didn't realize until I started playing the game, and that is one of the collectibles are videotapes, and specifically certain videotapes are only available if you're playing with that specific character. So if you're playing with Coco and you reach a stage that the videotape is made for Crash, you can't actually pick up the videotape, which means you have to go back and replay the stage as Crash or vice versa. But more than likely you will be replaying stages, not because of simply for the enjoyment, but especially if you're a completionist. If you want to unlock skins, or more importantly get the best time possible with time trials that unlock as you complete each stage, you will be replaying these stages and picking up collectibles, and more importantly getting the best scores possible. And that is by breaking all the crates, collecting all the fruit, trying to survive a stage without dying more than 3 times, which, depending on the stage, can be pretty arduous, and even finding hidden gems here and there. There are also bonus stages that are scattered throughout each stage. For gamers who question whether or not they would try to really reinvent the wheel and worry that it wouldn't have the same kind of grab or pull, or more importantly just that essence of a Crash Bandicoot game, there's no need to worry here. It is a fantastic experience when it comes to the gameplay. There is a co-op option where players can play against each other locally by passing the controller. You can either have a time trial where one player tries to outdo the other's time and hopefully make it to the checkpoint that is necessary to complete that trial, or try to break crates in a combo fashion. They are enjoyable and pretty much harkens back to the days of yore, but it's not like it makes the game that much better or worse. From a difficulty perspective, there are only 2 options when it comes to the difficulty, and this game does have some rather difficult moments. One option, which is the recommended option, is playing the modern way, which allows for checkpoints and pretty much infinite lives. And if you make it to the checkpoint, you restart at that checkpoint if you die. But if you're playing the retro style, if you're playing it like you used to, you will have only a set amount of lives, and if you reach 0, you will have to restart that entire level. And depending on that level, it may be a pretty big trek to the end, but the retro style does reward trial and error and pretty much learning the levels just like you would back in the old days. From a technical standpoint, the game runs very smoothly, it looks great, though there are some issues here and there when it comes to hitboxes, but this game does have that problem here and there when it comes to 3D platformers, and the fact that when you enter a somewhat 2D environment and the game has more behind it that you can see because you cannot control the camera fully, you will inevitably fall to your death because of course you cannot see exactly how much room that you have on that 2D plane. Overall, if you're a fan of the Crash Bandicoot franchise, if you've been hoping for a great 3D platformer, this is the game for you. This is exactly what you would have wanted from a Crash Bandicoot game in 2020. I can't recommend this any more than I could if you enjoy 3D platformers. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and eventually Xbox Series S and X. Now if you don't mind, I have some fruit to eat, or at least just pick up, some videotapes to watch of my old days of trying to become the best test subject possible, and eventually go to a rock concert that just turns against me. And if the drummer doesn't like what he sees when Crash crashes the party, he will have no choice but to say, "Oh lordy."